Alright, we have the ZPacks Plex Solo. I spent 21 days on the Colorado Trail with this. What are things I liked about it, some of the things I didn't like about it, and who's it for? It comes in at 13.97 ounces. Or 397 grams. With a CT. If I can get these all on here, I don't know if I can. Oops. 19.75 ounces. 560 grams. And actually 1.235 pounds. Might be another way to look at that. So setting up this tent is pretty straightforward. I just stake out the four corners and then put in all the other guy lines to snug it up. So I got to where I could set this up in about 5 minutes or so. But you can see I'll just keep adjusting to get it taut and roll up the doors. Quite an easy process. I'm going to start with the cons. The most obvious con is the $600 price tag. So, I mean, DCF tents aren't cheap, but they are very light and very strong. So you have to decide if you want to buy one or not. They're always going to be expensive. Condensation in a single wall tent is always a problem, and since it rained all but 2 or 3 days on this trip, I seem to hit the monsoon of monsoons, most of July. There was a lot of condensation to deal with, although after a while I got pretty good at it, and I didn't find that to be a monster problem, but it's something you'll have to deal with. I set it up with 10 tent stakes, and after watching Justin Outdoors with the Plex, combining the guy lines in the back to one stake, I can probably reduce that by 2 stakes, and that's probably what I'll do from now on. And what the con is, it does take a lot of tent stakes to set this up, although they're pretty light, so it's not a huge problem. My biggest problem was the tent's a little bit too short. I'm just a little bit over 6 feet, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. It was definitely not a deal breaker, because even if I touch the tent, big deal, get a little bit of water on me, it was never much to worry about, and that's in really rainy conditions, so I just don't see that as a deal breaker. So I think overall that's a con, but not a huge one. So at 6 foot tall, just a little over, I need another inch or two, I think, in the length. The width is fine. It would just be in the length. And I did have some trouble with the seam tape starting to come off. I haven't had a chance to get a hold of ZPacks and see what to do with that, but it seems to be a common problem with this tent. So I'll look into that and let you know how that turns out. And I think the biggest problem with these tents in general, with the one pole in the middle, it's in the way. It's not a huge deal. If I was more flexible, it'd be no deal, but I'm not the most flexible person in the world, so it's a little hard to get my knees around it sometimes. You can set it out just a little bit to give yourself a little more room, and that it's still just as stable, so I found that was a good way to deal with that. Now for the pros, I mean, it's lightweight. It's under 14 ounces. How are you going to beat that? It's definitely easy to pack up. It has a really small footprint. I was able to set up a tent where so many people couldn't and still get it level, which is super important for a good night's sleep, is to be level. And there always was a site, it seemed like, for me to be able to set it up. So that was really nice. A lot of complaints about not being able to pack these down. I haven't found that to be a problem. And I also really appreciate the fact they give you a stuff sack that it fits into. Who would think that's a big deal, but it tends to be. Fits absolutely perfect. Very easy to deal with that way. So, I mean, who's this tent for? It's someone that is willing to spend $600 for a very, very light tent, extremely durable. I did not get a drop of moisture on me from the outside from the rain. It did a fabulous job that way. Venting is actually not that bad. If you can keep one or both doors open, it helps a lot. But you'll still get some condensation. Once again, single wall tent. That's just how they are. So if you're 6'1" or taller, I would recommend the Plex. That'll give you a lot more room, and not so much a problem with the weight. That's not going to add that much weight, so probably worth it just to have the extra room. But for me, I'm definitely going to stick with this. I don't mind the fact I touch the walls every once in a while. I just don't think that's a deal breaker, and I think it's just not that much to worry about. If I, once again, was more flexible, I think I could get away with not having a problem at all. But it is just a little bit too tight that way. But I'll be using it because it worked really well on this trip, and I'm so glad I had it. Alright, so you can see pretty good headroom, right? Not too bad. And then if you look at the feet, they're just touching. So if I scoot up to where I'm almost touching on this side, but I still have room, right? It's not terrible. That's with my Trekology 2.0. And I also have my Nemo tensor. So it's quite a bit of loft to pull you up. I can get, if I scoot up far enough, I can get to where that doesn't quite touch. But sometimes in the night I end up more like that. Like I said, it's not a deal breaker. I love this tent. It did a fabulous job. And I got really good at setting it up quick. And like I said, I can pitch the darn thing almost anywhere. So just way more positives than negatives. I highly recommend it, actually. So here you can see the bathtub floor. I mean, it was always about 5 inches or so that I had set up. That part was fantastic. I mean, it definitely never got any moisture inside. And you can see how much room's back here. I mean, it's quite a bit of room to set something. You can get a whole pack right here if you want to. And these worked out really well, these little toggles. It took a while to figure out how to use those, but once I figured out how to tighten them and not get them too tight, those worked out really well. One thing I did notice is there's never enough moisture for it to come down here and drain through here that I ever had. It's like this will hold so much water before it ever start running down there and drain. So don't count on it draining on the inside. DCF seems to hold, the water seems to like to hang on to it. So I never had it drip on me though. It never actually dripped down off the inside, so that was never a problem. So you can see the hack I got from Justin right here, Justin Outdoors. So you can just run those two the same one. It's not quite as good as putting them straight out, but it's pretty darn good. So I think I'm going to start doing that to leave 2 more stakes at home. There's enough stakes on this tent.